Welcome, Clarity Coders. Today we're going to program an Instagram bot. I had a couple requests after my Reddit bot that I kind of continue that series and teach a few other automation tricks and techniques. So that's what we're going to do today. Now I'm going to assume that you have Python and it's installed on the path. So you should be able to open a command prompt, type in Python and get a response back. If you haven't, check out this video above. In the start of this video, I teach you how to install Python and get it working on the path. Once you have all that set up, let's jump right in. So to get started with this, we're going to use Selenium. Selenium is going to allow us to control our browser with Python. But to use that, we're going to need to use a WebDriver. Now you can get a WebDriver for Firefox, Internet Explorer, or Chrome, or whatever you want. I'm going to show you how to do Chrome just so we can kind of all follow along together. You can use whatever you would like if you want to go your own path. So the first thing we're going to need to do is check and see what version of Chrome we have. So if you open up Chrome, you can go to Help, About Chrome, and here it will show you your build, your Chrome build. You can see I have 81. So now I did a simple search for Chrome WebDriver, and the first thing that comes up is chromedriver.chromium.org, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Now you can see the different releases based on your build of Chrome. Remember, that's what we grabbed before in our About section. So mine was version 81, so that's the driver I'm going to download, this 81 right here. You download whatever is appropriate for your system. Now this took me to the next page where I can choose the appropriate download. I am on a Windows computer, so I'm going to download the Windows 32 zip, and you can see that my download started below. Let's go ahead and let this finish. Once your download's finished, I want you to navigate to whatever folder that's in now. So I'm just going to go to Show Folder, and in File Explorer, I'm just going to right-click on it and extract all. It's going to ask where I want to extract it, and I'm just going to push Extract. And now I have my Chrome driver exe. Now I need to put this on the path, that way Python can find this. And the easiest way to find a location on the path, if we all have Python installed on the path, is to put it in that folder. So I'm going to simply open up command prompt. So I'm just going to type cmd in my address bar. This is going to give me a command window, and then I can type Python. Now, if this doesn't work and gives you some type of error, that means Python isn't installed on the path and you need to access that video I talked about earlier. I'll link it in the top right corner and get Python installed on the path. So now we need to see where our Python's installed. So I'm going to import OS, import system. And then I'm going to type in this little command here, which should give me my path back. So now you can see that my Python is stored in my C drive in Python 38-32. So wherever this says here, that's where we're going to move this exe file to. So I'm going to grab this exe. I'm just going to cut. I'm going to go to that folder and I can paste it right in here. Now you could also add it in a different spot and add that to your environment variables. This is just a way I know that we can all store this in a location that's on the path. So now we should be ready to go. Let's go ahead and open up a text editor or whatever you like to code your Python in and start writing some code. I'm going to open up Visual Studio. Now there's one install we need to do, and that's to reach out and install Selenium itself. So you can do this in the command window that you just had up. I'm going to do it in the terminal in the bottom of Visual Studio Code, and we're going to do pip install Selenium. Now if you don't have this already, it's going to reach out and install it, and then we'll have everything we need to start this project. Awesome. Now that we have that installed, we can go ahead and start our project. Now I know that we're going to have to do a couple of imports here to work with Selenium, so I'm going to go ahead and do those first. So the first thing I want to do is import Selenium itself. So I'm going to do from Selenium import WebDriver, and then from selenium.webdriver.common.keys import keys. So this gives us a way to use Selenium and also a way to send keys to our program. And that was keys with a capital K. I almost missed that. Now, a lot of these Instagram bot tutorials use a class in Python. I don't really think we need a class for this. So I'm just going to build mine around functions. I am going to have a main function though. And you see this from time to time. You don't have to have it. But I'm going to create a main function, and that's just to protect my local variables, so my other functions don't have access to them. And then to make sure I run that down here, I'm going to call that main function. So if you're uncomfortable with that, you can watch some of my function videos and that'll help you a little bit. But basically, we just want all of our code to be inside of this main function. And now let's go ahead and see if we can load our Chrome WebDriver. So we're going to type browser, and this could be any variable name you wanted. I'm just using browser because it makes sense to me. I'm going to do WebDriver.Chrome, and that's it. And now let's go ahead and try and log into Instagram. So I'm going to create a new function for this, and I'm going to pass it browser. So I'm going to call it login, and it doesn't exist yet, so this isn't going to be valid yet. And this is the function that we're going to use to log into whatever we're trying to control. So also my login function, I'm accepting the variable browser. And these two don't have to be named the same. I'm just choosing to. And up here, I'm going to try and navigate to Instagram so we can log in. So let's do browser.get. And we just want to pass the URL we want to go to. Now I just grabbed the URL from when I try to log into Instagram. And I'm not logged in already. So now our main function should run. It should pull up here, grab a browser, pass that browser to our login function, and then get Instagram.com. So let's run this. And you can see here that it does pull up Instagram. Perfect. So we're getting there. And then, of course, it kind of drops out because we're not doing anything with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a breakpoint, and I'm going to run this in debug mode. And that's going to allow me to kind of pause that window that pops up. Now you could also just navigate there too in your normal browser. So I'm going to go down here in Visual Studio Code and I can do run and debug. I'm going to debug my current file. I'm going to actually add one more line here. I'm going to import time as well because we're going to want to sleep this program eventually so it doesn't run too fast. I'm going to stop this debugger. I'll just do time.sleep and sleep for 5 seconds. So now my debugger is actually not going to run this line if I pause it. So I'm actually going to pause it on the line after I get Instagram. I'm going to close out of this window and I'm going to debug it one more time. And you can see here, I'll try and pull these up side by side, that we now have our automated browser being controlled over here, and we've paused our program. So the program is actually just paused right here. It hasn't run this sleep line yet. It's just paused right here. So we can take a look at this Instagram page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on one of the, really anywhere, and I'm going to hit inspect at the bottom. This is going to bring up my developer console. I'm going to hit these three buttons over here, and I'm going to move the dock to the bottom just so it's a little more readable for us. And then over here, there's an arrow with a square box. If I click on that, then I can highlight a specific element that I want to inspect. So I want to be able to grab where I type my username into, where I type my password into, and the login button. Let's take a look at the username field first. If you look at this username, you can see that it doesn't have any really unique IDs or anything like that. It does have a name of username, and it has a label that says phone number, username, or email. So we can kind of choose whatever way we want to grab these out. We can also grab things by class if we wanted to with Selenium. We just want to find a way to target this input box here. So I'm going to use the value of username because I don't think that's very likely to change over time. So it should be safe for a while at least. So let's try and target that element. So I'm just going to call that username, and I'm going to set it equal to, I'm going to use my browser. I'm going to do .find element by CSS selector. It's a mouthful. And I'm going to pass in what I'm trying to find as a string. So I got my string there, and now I'm going to use square brackets, and inside of that, I'm going to look for an attribute of name that's equal to, and then remember capitalization, punctuation, all that's important. You can see it's username all lowercase, so I'm going to look for in single quotes. Now I use double quotes for my string, so I'm using single quotes here, username. So that should grab my username element now. Now I'm going to do the same thing for password and the login button itself. So I'm going to inspect, I'm going to go down to password. You can see here that it also has a name of password. So let's do the same thing we did above. Just copy pasta that. We'll say password here. We'll call this variable password, and we'll switch this to password as well. So now we should have our username and our password able to click or do whatever we wanted with. And let's grab this login button. You can see that it found the div here. I can expand that by clicking on this little arrow. And then you can see under there that I have a button here. And there's some different things in here. We could grab this by class. That might be our best bet, is to grab it by this class. Or, because it's the first button on the page, I think we can just grab all the buttons and just use the first one. Now, this would break if they happen to move the login with Facebook above the normal login button or something like that. So we're kind of making a little risk here, but let's just grab all the buttons and we'll just target the first button on the page. So I'm going to call this login and I'm going to set it equal to, and I'm going to do the same line from above, except this time I'm just going to grab all the buttons. Now we have our 3 elements on the page that we need to interact with: the username, the password, and the login. And I want to note something here that can really kind of trip people up. Right here, we're using find element by CSS selector. There is also a find elements, plural. Browser.find elements down here. So you can see one of these is going to return a list. So if I do both of these almost exactly the same, this first login would return a single button. Even if there's multiple buttons on the page, it's just going to grab the first one, which is going to work for us because the first one is a login button. Now the second one is going to grab a list of all the buttons on the page. So if we wanted to use that, then to access the first button, we'd have to use a CSS, or not CSS, our list index value. So we'd have to grab out the 0 index of the list. And if we change these to the plural and grabbed a list, even though there's only one username input, we would still have to use the index value of 0, even if there's only one item in that list. So we're going to make sure that all of ours are using just the element version, not the plural version, and we're going to use the plural version later in this program, so you'll see that as well. So since we have a single element now, we're going to go ahead and interact with that element. So I'm going to send keys to the username. So I have the username web element. I'm going to do .send_keys, and here I'm going to send my Instagram username. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, this is not my real Instagram. I'm going to do the same thing with password. I'm going to send keys to the password, and I'm going to pass in my password. Now, at the time of you watching this video, this will no longer be the password to this account. It might not even be an active account, so you're going to have to use your own information here. Don't try and use this one. Now, after we enter both of those fields, then we just want to click the login button. So we're going to do login.click. Now, what we're interacting with here, these are actually web elements. So these are the functions on the web element that belongs to Selenium. So assuming this all works correctly, we should log in successfully. Now, after I load the browser, I'm also going to pause and make sure it has time to load. Again, this number could be different depending on how fast or slow your internet connection is. So you can adjust that as needed. I'm going to stop my debugger. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this one. And I'm going to run again. I'm going to take out my breakpoint. I'm just going to run it and see if it logs in successfully. Well, I'll actually leave the breakpoint so we can take a look at it if it was successful. And just like that, it looks like it has successfully logged in. Now, you can pretty much program anything you want to do here. I'm going to go to a few of the tags that I like to frequent, and I'm just going to like the top 3 pictures on there if I haven't liked them already, and that's going to kind of be my bot. Now, you can make something that comments, you can make anything you want. This is programming. This is just my example here. So the format I'm going to use here is, if I paste in this URL here, you can see I go to Instagram/explore/tags, and then I can put any tag I want here. Now, I have some ones that I visit that I'm going to import into this program. So my first one, for example, would be programming. When I load up this tag, you can see it has some images here. I'm just going to grab the first 3 images. I'm going to open them up. And then if I haven't liked this, I'm going to go ahead and push the like button. That's what I want the bot to do. And I'm going to do this for a set list of tags here. So I'm going to save you from watching me type. I'm going to just import my tags. I have a list of tags. It's tabbed over one too far here. I want it on the same level. So I'm going to hold shift to push tab and it'll bring it back. And you can see these are just the tags that I'm going to visit. My program's going to visit. Again, this code will all be on my GitHub if you'd like it. So now for every single tab, I want to visit that subreddit, not subreddit, the Instagram, whatever you call that, and then like the top 3 pictures if I haven't liked it already. So I'm going to create a function for that, but I'm also going to do that inside a for loop so I can do it for each of these tags. So I'm going to say for tag, and again, this variable here, I could pick whatever I wanted. I picked tag because it made sense to me. In tags, this is my list. So each time it's going to grab out a single version of this, and I'm going to use this to create my URL that I'm visiting. So I'm going to create a function called visit tag. We haven't created it yet. And I'm going to pass it in my browser. And I'm also going to pass it in this URL. But I'm going to do that dynamically because I want this tag to change every time. So I'm going to use an F string here. So with an F string, I can pass in my value that I would like. Let me minimize this debugging window so we can see it here. So I'm going to pass in the whole string, but I want this programming to change depending on what tag I'm passing in. So I'm going to wrap that in curly braces, and I'm going to use tag instead of hard coding programming in there. So each time I should get a different subreddit passed in as a URL. Now it's flagging our visit tag. That's because we haven't created that function yet. So up here, let's go ahead and create that function. We're going to call it def visit tag. Make sure, however, you're choosing to capitalize this, you're capitalizing it the same. And the first thing I want to do inside of this URL is I want to go to that page wherever we passed in. So I'm going to say browser.get, and then I'm going to use URL. I also have to define, we passed in a browser and we passed in a URL. We don't have to name these the same, I am. And then after we get to this page, we can sleep and let it load. And then we can work with that page, whatever that page is. Now I've already got a page pulled up here. So we can see how we're going to grab these elements. So I need to click on each of these images. So I'm just going to worry about one at a time, and then I can put in some type of loop to click multiple ones. So I'm going to right click, inspect, move this to the bottom again. I'm going to click this little arrow again, click on my div. And you can see that it gives me this div, which has class of _9 AHH0. And the capitalization matters, obviously. Now, if I look at this next one, I can see that it has the same class ID, that _9 AHH0. The next one, same thing. So these all have that same class. So I'm going to use that class to grab the elements on the page. Now, in this case, I want to do 3, or maybe you want to do 4, or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to use the plural version to grab multiple elements. My pictures equals, I'm going to do browser.find, make sure we're doing find elements, plural, by CSS selector. And we're going to say we want to find a div. So you can see that the tag is div. So we want to find a div and square brackets with a class that equals, and then I'm going to copy this so I don't mistype it because it has some weird capitals and things like that. So now pictures should be everything with that class tag. So it's probably going to have like 9 or whatever, however many pictures are default loaded here. Now, I don't want to be too spammy, so I'm going to set a limit for how many pictures I like each time I visit a tag here. So I'm going to say my image count. This is just my image count. Personally, it could be whatever you want. I'm going to set it at 0, and I'm going to break after I like 3 images. So now inside my now I'm going to create a for loop to loop over and start liking images. I'm going to say for picture, and you notice here I'm just using the non-plural version in these for loops. Again, that's just a standard that I follow. You don't have to. In pictures. So now I have an individual picture. So the first time I should have this first one. Second time through the for loop, I'll have this second one, so on and so forth. I'm going to do picture.click. So I'm going to simulate clicking on this div. And then I'm going to do time.sleep 5. Now, I added a sleepy time variable, and I set it to 5 up here. That way, if I ever need to update this, I don't have to change all my 5s in here. Instead, I can just have one that I update up top. I'm going to set that as a variable just in case I need to change this and give myself more time. So I'm clicking on the picture, then I'm going to go to sleep. And so hopefully we automatically get to a page that looks like this and we can proceed from there. So again, if you don't have a debugger, you can just run this. I'm going to break right here. Oops, I'm going to stop my other one that I was still debugging. Put a breakpoint right there, and I'm going to run my debugger again. Cool, and you'll see here we did click on that image. We're paused right here in our for loop, and now we can continue to interact with this image. So we're going to sleep here for 5 seconds in our case and let this image load. And now we need to interact with this image again, this page again rather. So again, I'm going to open up the developer tools. And I'm going to take a look at this heart here. So I want to like this image. And looking at this label, you can see that it's got this weird label tag here, but it's called like with a capital L. So I'm assuming that's the only one that's named like on this page. So I think we can just reference that to kind of grab out that like button and then push it. I'm going to call this heart and I'm going to set it equal to, and I'm going to do browser dot. Again, we could do find elements, or in our case, we just want to find the one element, the first element. We're hoping there's only one in general. So I'm just going to use find element. So I'm not using the plural version. And then I don't have any certain tag I'm looking for. I'm just going to look for that label. So I'm looking for this label, and I'm looking for where it equals like with a capital L. Make sure it's exactly like it is down here. And if they ever change this, we'll have to change our code. So assuming it finds this, we should have a way to like the image now. And all we should have to do is do heart.click, and it should click on that element. Also help if I spelled heart correctly, consistently. Depending on how you code this, it might click this button again. So say we just use this class of button. Now this button might turn red when we like it, and the second time you run this program, it may unlike the picture. But I'm guessing that they're going to change this label when it's fired up. So if I click on like here, and I take a look at this heart again, you can see now they've changed that label to unlike. So the next time we open up this picture, it's not going to find anything here. So it's not going to be able to click it. And I think that's probably going to throw an error. So we'll go ahead and run that. We'll just let it error out. It doesn't hurt us. And we'll see what happens here. But I'm assuming the second time we see the same picture and it's already liked, it's going to error out on us. So let's go ahead and run this. I'm not using the debugger. I'm just running it now. So this errored out. It tried to move on to clicking the next div, and it wasn't able to do that because we still had this window open. And I also didn't implement my image click so we don't do 30,000 images. I just wanted to do the first 3. So we also need to close this window after we're done clicking the heart. I'm going to inspect this element, and I'm going to look. I need to change the default of this. I'm going to inspect this element. I'm going to look at this close button here, and you can see it has a label similar to the heart of close. So after we like the heart, then I want to go ahead and find the close button. I'm going to copy this line. I'm going to change this to close with a capital C, and then I'm going to do close.click. Now for each of these pictures, whether we're successful in liking them or not, I'm going to update my image count. So I'm going to set my image count plus equals 1. I'll do that at the end, actually. Now, if my image count is greater than or equal to 3, I'm going to go ahead and break out of this for loop, just so I don't like too many pictures. All right, let's go ahead and try and run this again. Now you can see as this is running, it doesn't seem to be unchecking or erroring out if it doesn't find a like button. So we can leave that as is. and it seems to be jumping from tag to tag okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I'm going to go ahead and kill my script here. Just close out of that. That should kill the program as well because this appears to be working okay. I'm going to add one more sleep every time we click on a new picture. So when we click on a new picture, I'm going to go ahead and sleep for 5 seconds after that just to break it up. Now this is going to run one time through and then be done. It's going to close out after that. So if you wanted this to run forever or to run every hour or something like that, you could add a while true, tab this inside. Now it's going to loop through all your tags once, and then it would immediately start looping through them again. It's going to look pretty like a bot to me, so I would do something like time.sleep here as well, and maybe make it run every hour or something like that. These are seconds, so you could add in some value here of a longer sleep time before it runs again and let it run again, that kind of thing. This is for educational purposes only, of course. Don't use this on your real account. I don't know what the rules are. You might get banned. This is just to demonstrate how we can use Selenium when we don't have an API, or Instagram has an API, but it's limited, and we can kind of do anything we want with that program. That's all for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, check out the comments below. If this code doesn't work like you would expect in the future, you can always reference my GitHub, and I'll try to have an updated version of this there that works to some degree. That way you can follow along. And as always, keep coding.